when you guys are going to come up with your design for the linoleum cut print, and you can see this is the linoleum that we're going to be using. It's pretty thick, like it's not really easy to bend. That's because it has a backing on it. So you'll be using this. You guys are looking for, in your imagery, you're wanting to create depth. So you're wanting to think about overlapping and using perspective maybe, but somehow creating depth in your final image. You're also going to be using pattern. You're eventually going to be using color, and it's really important for you to create a focal point. Okay, so you need to be thinking about that. Even in creating a pattern, are you going to have one part of the pattern be a little bit bigger? How are you going to create that focal point? Are you going to have one part that's completely different from the rest of your pattern? Does that make sense? Okay, so you're going to start by creating a drawing. Once you've done that, we're going to scan it in, we're going to flip it, and we're going to print it out that way. Then once we've printed it, you guys are going to use this copy paper, and you're each going to get a sheet of linoleum this size. You don't have to use this proportionally. Like if yours is a square, we can cut this down, that's fine. And you're going to take the copy paper then, you're going to put it between your paper and the linoleum. So let's say that this was my paper. I would put the copy paper in between, I put my paper on top, and then I take a pencil and go over all my lines. That way you know where to cut. Does that make sense? So you're not having to redraw it on the linoleum, you're just copying it on there so that you can just keep going and get cutting, okay? So once you get your linoleum like this, you're going to make sure that you're using these on your tables so that you're not holding your linoleum. Please don't sit this down and then go like this and then take the knife and cut into your hand. I had someone actually sever a tendon last year. It was not fun. So make sure that you're using this to cut towards. This will hold your linoleum so that you can cut this way. You should not ever have your hand in front of your knife, okay? If for some reason you need to have your hand on there, put your hand behind and then go to cut, okay? These are the knives that we're using. They are very sharp. Some of them are a little more dull, but we can sharpen them. They need to be sharp. So it's important that you're keeping your hand out of the way of the blade because these do slip quite a bit because this is pretty tough, okay? So you're gonna go ahead, you can choose your blade. We have some that look like a V, like this. We have some that are more ovular, like this. And some of them are wider, some of them are smaller. So depending on the thickness of the line that you want, that's gonna be the knife that you use. So I have kind of a middle ovular one, and I'm gonna go ahead and put my hand on here, just because I'm used to doing that, and I'm gonna choose a line, and I'm gonna press into the linoleum, and I'm gonna start to cut, okay? This is called a burr. All of these need to go in the trash. I don't want them laying on my tables, okay? So as you're working, just make sure that you're putting all of those in the trash eventually. So you're just gonna cut into the linoleum. You're gonna follow the lines that you've already drawn and created. You're gonna use different knives to achieve those thicknesses. So this one's pretty thick, and I said this was a medium-sized one. If you want a really, really thin line, or if you want dots, you can take this and you can just poke into it and create a really cool texture. Remember at the beginning of the year when we were doing drawing, we talked about using stippling to create value. This is a great tool for that. So if I wanted to have a place that was really dark in value, I would use less dots because that's what's actually going to print. Whatever is left on here, that's what's actually printing. Whatever you're cutting away, that's not going to print. So if I wanted a space that was really light or the color of my paper, then I would want to put lots of dots really close together. Does that make sense? Okay, you can also use the regular knives to create a hatching pattern. So you can hatch and you can cross hatch to create that value. The closer your lines are together, the more the more you're going to see the color of your paper. So if your paper is white, that's going to be the lighter area. If your paper is black, it's going to be the darker area. So you have to be thinking ahead as far as what color you're going to be printing on and how you want that to show up. Does that make sense? Because you are going to be creating value. Okay. So I would highly recommend using some of the scraps that I have to practice to see what kinds of lines these are creating before you just go ahead and dig into your final. Once you get your final piece all cut out, it should look something like this. And then you're going to take this. This is big, but you can see how I've used pattern. I have a focal point.
Yeah, that's
yeah, it is.
It's supposed to look like that?
No.
Okay, good.
But you guys can work towards this. But I've also created value by hatching out parts of the face and leaving parts. Okay? So this is what I'm looking for from you guys. You guys can do this. Alright? So it's gonna look like this, and then I will show you how we're gonna print this next time, but it's gonna end up then printing like this. Okay? But it's printing the opposite, so you have to make sure you're ready for that. That's why we're gonna flip your image before you even put it on, so that when you're done, it turns out the same as what you started with. Okay? Y'all good with that? Do you understand the process? Are there any questions? Things that I missed?
So what are we trying to create? We're just like a face?
Yeah, you can stop.